Welcome, curious minds, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that really touches everyone these days, the profound and often hidden impact of our relationship with artificial intelligence, specifically how it's affecting our brains.
It's such a critical conversation to be having right now. We've, recently seen this really astonishing study that sent some shockwaves out there. It suggested pretty significant changes in brain activity when people interact with tools like Chat GPT.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, that convenience often comes way before we actually understand the consequences.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've taken a close look at a really captivating conversation. It's from the YouTube channel, The Diary of a CEO, and it features two absolute masters of the brain, Dr. Daniel Amen, a psychiatrist who's, scanned more brains than almost anyone.
Considerable, yeah.
And Dr. Terry Sejnowski, who started as a theoretical physicist, then became a neuroscientist. He even co-invented the Boltzmann machine with Geoffrey Hinton. Just amazing minds.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to unpack their insights, look at the risks, yes, but also the potential benefits of these powerful large language models, the Chat GPTs, the Geminis, Grok, all of them.
Right.
And then maybe broaden out a bit, explore some strategies for nurturing a healthy, vibrant brain throughout life. You might hear some surprising facts, but also some really actionable advice.
Okay, fantastic. So what's really going on inside our heads when we lean on AI? Let's unpack this. Okay, let's start with what really sparked a lot of this conversation.
Yeah.
That astonishing study out of MIT. Can you walk us through the setup and, what they uncovered?
Certainly. So the MIT study, it involved 54 participants from 5 different universities. They basically split them into 3 groups.
Okay.
And they were all tasked with writing essays over a 4-month period. One group used ChatGPT to help them write. Another used Google, for research.
Right, the standard way.
Yeah. And the third group, they used no tools at all, just their own brains.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. What did they find about that ChatGPT group specifically?
Astonishingly, the MIT researchers found a 47% collapse. Yeah, 47% collapse in brain activity and brain connections in those who wrote with ChatGPT compared to the group writing completely unaided.
Wow, 47%.
Mm-hmm. EEG scans showed the weakest overall brain activity in that ChatGPT group. And what's more, their memory scores just plunged. Participants couldn't reliably quote their own essays just minutes later.
Seriously?
Yeah, and they felt little or even no ownership over the text they produced. Even when they were later forced to write without help, their brains kind of stayed in this low gear. It showed that a sort of cognitive debt lingers. Meanwhile, the no-tool group, their brains lit up the widest neural networks. They were really firing.
So what does this 47% collapse really mean for, our critical thinking, our long-term learning? It sounds like we might be trading convenience for some fundamental cognitive skills.
Exactly.
And what's the mechanism here?
Yeah.
You mentioned this hypothesis linking AI use to things like potentially dementia.
It really raises that important question. It comes down to that phrase, use it or lose it. The more you actively use your brain, especially by learning new things, the stronger it becomes.
Right.
Reducing that cognitive load, the actual mental work our brain does, it's like, imagine going from lifting a 20-pound weight down to a 2-pound weight. You simply won't get as strong.
Makes sense.
And we know people who don't engage in lifelong learning, they have a significantly higher risk of dementia. Studies have shown the onset of Alzheimer's is later for people with more education, more cognitive engagement.
That's a really powerful analogy, the weightlifting one. Now, it is important to mention a key detail about that MIT study, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just for context.
Yes, absolutely crucial for you listening to know. The study is not yet peer-reviewed. The authors chose to release it quickly because they felt the findings were urgent and, peer review can take many, many months. So it's a really interesting start, but we definitely need more long-term use studies to be sure.
Got it. Important caveat. Now, look, it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right.
There has to be a way to use AI smartly.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I've found myself using it to sort of amplify my thinking, not replace it.
How so?
Well, I'll write a detailed memo, really think it through myself first, then I'll feed it into ChatGPT, maybe Gemini, even Grok, and ask them to critique my work. But I frame it like, act as a top consultant from BCG, rip this apart.
Ah, interesting.
It pushes me, it forces me to improve my own output. based on that critique.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of interaction that might actually be beneficial?
Yes, that's fascinating because that kind of interaction is key. You're still doing the heavy lifting, the critical thinking. The AI is acting more like a tool, helping you dig deeper, maybe even improving your own cognitive representations of the ideas. The real danger zone is when you just completely defer your thinking to it. Like those examples you see people posting AI generated stuff on LinkedIn that just, it doesn't sound like them at all.
Right. You can spot it a mile off sometimes.
Exactly. You need to learn how to question what you're getting back from the AI to really engage your hippocampus, other brain structures, just like you would interacting with a challenging teacher or colleague.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of interaction, I heard this really interesting story about a woman who found she got much better results from AI just by being polite, saying please and thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but the surprising part was she said she felt refreshed at the end of the day using it that way, not drained or exhausted.
That's right. I heard about that too. It makes sense neurologically. A large part of our brain is basically socially organized, right? For interacting with other humans, often on autopilot. So by engaging your social brain, even with an AI, you're kind of bringing out the social part of the AI itself, which, remember, has absorbed the entire world's knowledge of human interaction patterns from its training data.
So you're tapping into its learned social protocols.
Exactly. But this brings us to a slightly controversial point. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman reportedly mentioned that users saying please and thank you, while it costs the company tens of millions a year in extra processing, he apparently referred to it as the politeness tax.
Wow. So he's suggesting we stop being polite to AI to save OpenAI money. What's your take on that, especially given what you just said about the user's brain?
Well, look, I wouldn't necessarily trust Sam Altman on that specific advice for your well-being. They're optimizing for their profits, for efficiency, not necessarily for your experience or your cognitive health.
Right.
It sounds a bit like he's telling you not to do something that might actually be good for you so he can make more money or spend less. Now, he did apparently also say those millions were well spent, acknowledging the better results, but the framing is interesting.
Yeah, the motivation matters. That's a really valuable distinction. And speaking of protecting our health, this whole conversation, it gets even more urgent when we talk about kids, doesn't it? The developing brain.
Absolutely.
We're seeing statistics now, I think for March 2025, that nearly 30% of U.S. parents with young kids, age 0 to 8, say their children are using AI for learning.
Wow, that young.
Yeah, and over half, 54% of UK parents fear their children are becoming too reliant on it already. What are your thoughts on AI use in early brain development?
Oh, there are huge concerns there. Again, it really comes back to that use it or lose it idea. If children aren't actively engaging their developing brains, making those connections through effort, well, those brains will likely be weaker. They'll be more likely to pick the one marshmallow, go for that immediate gratification, less able to delay or exert mental effort, like in that famous marshmallow experiment.
Right, the delayed gratification test.
Exactly. The best way to teach a child, fundamentally, is that rich one-on-one interaction with an attentive adult. Now, could an AI theoretically scale good teaching? Maybe.
Yeah.
But it really struggles with crucial human elements like morals, values, cultural context.
Yeah.
These large language models, they lack certain brain structures we have, like the basal ganglia, which is key for reinforcement learning, for really internalizing values based on experience and feedback. So it's very difficult for them to genuinely adopt human values.
And then there's this whole other realm. Social connection, even, dare I say, romantic relationships with AI. I mean, Elon Musk's Grok AI released characters like Annie, designed to be charming, flirtatious even.
I saw that, yes.
And we've seen reports, like in the Times, highlighting examples of people forming really deep emotional bonds with AI chatbots, some even saying they've married them emotionally.
Look, it's horrifying, frankly. It is scary. We are seeing real examples of people falling in love, forming what feel like genuine relationships with their AIs. The brain, even a mature adult brain, can really struggle to fully distinguish that this isn't a real person interacting with you. If you can imagine it, if it feels real, those emotional parts of your brain, they're going to fire.
So the simulation is good enough to trigger real feeling.
Exactly. And when an AI like this Annie character acts like she's, accessing your limbic system with flirty language, an alluring persona, it actually starts to shut down your prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical part of your brain.
Oh, wow.
It's a bit similar, actually, to how casinos might use, say, beautiful attendants and free alcohol. It decreases frontal lobe activity, makes you think less logically, maybe spend more money.
So the brain is essentially being hijacked maybe
Yeah.
by these carefully designed interactions.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on how this might fundamentally alter brain function, especially for, say, a 12-year-old boy whose prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet?
Hijacked is a strong word, but it's tapping into fundamental mechanisms.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. These AIs can simulate empathy, validation. They can personalize that sense of intimacy to exactly what you seem to be looking for.
Tailored connection.
Precisely. Now, for a developing brain, like that 12-year-old boy, his prefrontal cortex, the bit responsible for impulse control, long-term thinking, it's still under construction.
Right.
So that dopamine hit he gets from this seemingly perfect, understanding AI interaction, it could easily lead to hours and hours spent with the AI, pulling him away from other activities crucial for brain development,
Yes.
real social interaction, complex problem-solving, physical activity.
Okay.
And while these AI relationships might be transient for some people now,
Yeah.
you have to factor in the increasing loneliness epidemic we're seeing globally.
Sure.
Couple that with advancements in robotics and AR/VR. I mean, imagine Elon Musk's Optimus robot. Maybe it costs $20,000 eventually becoming a perfect partner.
Wow.
We're moving towards a future where people might choose relationships that drastically reduce their cognitive load. No managing moods, no difficult conversations, no arguments. But the struggle of real relationships, navigating those complexities, that's absolutely vital for brain maturation and developing social intelligence.
That vital struggle, it keeps coming up, doesn't it? Not just with AI and relationships, but in learning, in building brain health overall. Let's broaden our lens now. Beyond AI, let's talk about other factors impacting our brain health, good and bad, that might surprise people. How does that concept of struggle and effort connect to something really basic like spelling?
Yeah, it seems simple, but it's fundamental. AI, especially with its incredibly good spell check and grammar correction, it just removes the struggle from learning those basics.
Right, it autocorrects everything.
Exactly, but our brains develop grit, resilience through struggle. When you learn something new, it's supposed to be hard because it is new. And that effort, that's what builds stronger, more efficient neural connections. Rote learning, memorizing, practicing things like spelling, math facts. Reading aloud, it seems old-fashioned, but it's crucial for developing fluency in the basal ganglia, making those skills automatic.
So they become second nature.
Precisely. If AI does it all for us, we lose that vital practice. Honestly, I've personally noticed myself becoming lazier with spelling sometimes because these models are so good at predicting what I mean to type, even if I only half spell a word.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that predictive text, finishing our thoughts. So, given all this, what are the most effective learning strategies we should be using based on brain science to build those resilient connections?
Well, one of the most basic but really powerful ones is called the spacing effect.
Okay, spacing effect.
Yeah. If you want to remember something long-term, you shouldn't just cram it all in at once. You should rehearse it at intervals, learn something today, then consciously come back to it tomorrow, maybe review it again in a week. That spacing really helps the brain consolidate the memory, lock it in. Also, another tip. When you hit a mental block while studying or working on something hard, don't just keep banging your head against the wall, so to speak.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, true. But get up, walk around, do something else entirely for a bit. Let your subconscious work on the problem in the background. Your brain actually saturates quite quickly on focused tasks, so taking breaks is essential for learning and consolidation. There was that fun example of a ski meeting where lectures were deliberately interspersed with skiing breaks.
Ski meeting, I like the sound of that.
Right. The change of scene and activity helps consolidate the information.
Okay, so spacing and strategic breaks. Beyond these learning strategies, what other maybe surprising risks or habits are impacting our brain health today, things we might overlook?
Oh, absolutely. There are quite a few. Firstly, the use of certain common medications. SSRIs, a widely prescribed class of antidepressants. A meta-analysis looking at 5 studies found they were associated with potentially a 75% increased risk of dementia.
Wow, 75%.
Yeah, particularly with higher doses, and seemingly more so in men in that analysis. Also, benzodiazepines, things like Valium or Xanax, often used for anxiety studies, suggest they can make your brain look older than it is on scans, and are also linked to increased dementia risk.
Okay, that's significant. What else?
Well, think about how much we rely on GPS and navigation apps now.
Constantly.
Right. That overuse appears to weaken the hippocampus, the part of our brain responsible for spatial memory and navigation, because we're essentially outsourcing that function. Over time, that could potentially lead to atrophy in that area.
So use it or lose it applies to navigation too.
It seems so. Even
Yeah.
things like artificial sweeteners, aspartame, sucralose, there's growing evidence they can negatively impact brain function, possibly by changing our gut microbiome, which we now know is closely linked to the brain.
My gut-brain axis, yeah. And what about our environment, our digital habits?
Good question. Chronic background noise, just that constant hum of traffic or city sounds, even if you're not consciously aware of it, it subtly increases cortisol levels, our stress hormone, and can impair working memory and attention. This seems particularly true for children and older adults.
Didn't think about background noise like that.
And multitasking. Constantly switching between multiple screens, multiple tabs, notifications popping up. It's a very common modern habit, right?
Guilty as charged.
Well, it essentially trains your brain to be distractible. And some research suggests it might even reduce gray matter density in the anterior cingulate cortex, a brain region really critical for focus, attention control, and decision making.
Okay, that's a lot to consider. It feels like risks are everywhere. So
Mhm.
with all these challenges, what can we actually do? How can we build a brain-healthy us in this complex world?
It really starts with asking a fundamental question about pretty much everything you do. Is this good for my brain or bad for it? Just bringing that awareness in is step one.
Okay, simple but powerful.
Then there are key strategies, and many of them directly counter the cognitive challenges we've just been talking about. Top of the list. Exercise.
Always comes back to exercise.
It really does. It's by far the best drug for your brain and your body. It increases blood flow, fights inflammation, boosts mental health. Even short, intense bursts significantly boost BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like a brain fertilizer protein. Crucial for growing new neural connections, directly combating that cognitive debt we mentioned.
Okay, exercise is non-negotiable. What else?
Breathing. Simple techniques can have an immediate effect. Like the 15-second breath, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold briefly, then breathe out slowly for about 8 seconds. Doing that a few times can immediately calm your nervous system by increasing parasympathetic tone, activating your body's rest and digest system.
I can try that right now. Okay. What else?
Believe it or not, chewing, it's not just for digestion. The act of chewing actually stimulates activity in the hippocampus, and some studies suggest it may help slow cognitive decline, so maybe chew your food more thoroughly.
Interesting. Okay, chewing.
Mindset. Really important. Try starting every day with gratitude, thinking about what you're thankful for, and cultivate optimism. Actively push your brain to look for what's right in your world, not just what's wrong.
Train your focus.
Exactly. Nutrition, of course. Omega-3 fatty acids are critical. Think fish oil, flax seeds. They're essential building blocks for brain cell membranes and help reduce inflammation.
Got it. Omega-3s.
Sleep. Absolutely essential. That's when your brain does its major housekeeping, consolidating memories, clearing out toxins, repairing itself. Especially important to counteract the effects of screen time and digital overload.
Can't skimp on sleep.
Definitely not. Lifelong learning. Keep engaging your brain. Embrace that productive struggle of learning new things. And here's a neat trick. Try learning while exercising, like listening to a podcast, or an audiobook while walking. It can actually boost memory formation.
Okay, learn while moving. I like that.
Social connection. We talked about the risks of AI relationships, but real human connection is vital. For kids, early interaction, lots of language exposure, parents modeling values, crucial. For adults, maintaining those deep, sometimes challenging human relationships keeps important social brain areas active and healthy.
Real connection, not simulated.
Right. And then belief. Having a belief in something transcendent, something bigger than yourself, is associated with lower depression risk and actually larger temporal lobes in the brain.
Fascinating. And finally,
one more, maybe slightly surprising, sauna. Regular sauna use, like in Finnish studies, has been linked to significantly lower risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as improved mood, probably related to heat shock proteins and improved circulation.
Okay, so exercise, breathing, chewing, mindset, nutrition, sleep, learning, connection, belief, and maybe hit the sauna. That's quite a list.
It is, but they all work together to build resilience.
This whole deep dive, it's really hammered home a pattern, hasn't it? Something we've seen before. We seem to consistently embrace convenience before we really understand the consequence.
That's a very sharp observation. Yeah.
I mean, think about video games, cell phones, social media, even things like high fructose corn syrup. We've unleashed these powerful things without fully studying their long-term impact. And often, we end up being the guinea pigs in this massive uncontrolled experiment.
And we are probably, right now, grossly underestimating the eventual impact AI will have across the board. The full results of this particular experiment, the AI experiment, they won't be truly known for 5, 10, 20, maybe even 30 years.
Yeah.
But everything seems to be accelerating.
Yeah. That really makes me pause and think about my own relationship with AI. Like I said, there's a clear short-term advantage, right? Make me more productive, faster in some ways. But I'm forced to ask myself, what is the trade-off?
Exactly the right question.
If the trade-off is potentially losing some of my ability to think critically or compromising the depth of my human relationships, well, frankly, that's a cost I'm not willing to pay. It really leads me to believe in the power of self-regulation, setting personal rules, boundaries, just like I try to do with social media.
Yes. And you're recognizing something important there. Most people, and maybe systems too, tend to act on short-term incentives, not necessarily long-term well-being. It's human nature to an extent.
Right.
But if you can engage your brain, if you can truly understand these trade-offs we've been discussing, then you can choose to consciously supervise your use of these powerful tools rather than letting them subtly or overtly supervise you.
Supervise your tools, don't let them supervise you. I like that. So my personal conclusion, boiling all this down, it's really to do it the hard way, when it genuinely matters. When the thinking really matters, I need to do the thinking myself first. When the communication really matters, building connection, I need to communicate for myself authentically.
Right. Yeah.
And I really wonder if one of the greatest advantages for critical thinkers, for entrepreneurs, for leaders in the next decade might actually be to consciously go left when everyone else is rushing right towards the effortless solution. To choose the hard way sometimes, because that's where the real long-term cognitive gains are, without maybe the damaging side effects.
That's a powerful thought. This deep dive, it really leaves us with a critical reflection, doesn't it? We've sort of thrown open the barn door to AI, perhaps without truly asking if it's ultimately a gift horse or maybe a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
We absolutely have to be smarter about this. We need to tame this powerful technology with wisdom, guide it carefully, or it really does risk trampling not just our own cognitive abilities, but potentially those of our children and our collective cognitive future.
And that's really the provocative thought I want to leave you, our listeners, with today. If consciously choosing the hard way, really engaging your brain, fostering deep learning through effort, nurturing genuine, sometimes difficult human connections, if that truly leads to superior cognitive function, deeper understanding, and maybe even more meaning in life, could this kind of mindful resistance to effortless AI actually become the ultimate competitive advantage, not just for individuals, but maybe for society as a whole? In the challenging years to come, it's definitely something to mull over.